playing around and, teasing and trying to be funny, took his socks and shoes off, and, after a while just kind of made it seem like they hurt and asked me if I would mind massaging them.
If they were truly not doing anything wrong, they would not be ashamed to be honest about what was going on there. Hey everybody, thanks for coming back for another video talking about Mark and Leslie Dollar, who ran Adullam Youth Outreach. I've been talking about my experience, I've been sharing others' experiences, and today we're going to talk to Makenzie. Makenzie was a survivor of Adullam, and unfortunately she was in Adullam at a very young age, only 12 years old. Makenzie, I'm so happy that you're on. Tell me, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
Awesome.
Well, I know we've talked a little bit before, and I know that you have a lot of really good insight into your experience, but maybe just to begin with, let's just do something a little bit of a warm-up. Tell me what you enjoy doing with your free time that makes you happy.
Ooh, okay. Well, I like reading and watching movies. My fiance and I are currently watching Supernatural through.
Oh, yeah.
And it's amazing. We'll pause it for no reason or just because I want to look at him and he'll get so mad.
What season are you on of Supernatural?
With him, I am on, I think we just started season 3. And then before I restarted it with him, I was on season 8.
Oh my gosh. So you're like a devoted fan.
Oh, yeah. I bought a license plate cover thing from Shein that was Supernatural. My car keys were Supernatural.
Oh, wow.
I'm a hard fan right here.
Love it. And tell me, how old are you now?
I'm 21 now. I just turned 21 in November.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about how you met Mark and Leslie Dollar and anything that you feel is important to know about your time before you met them.
Before I met Mark and Leslie, I was a facility kid. I had already been to an acute and a residential, and then went back home. Things kind of got heavy after about 2 weeks of being home there. And so my parents had found Mark and Leslie. And the crazy thing is we lived in Virginia at the time. So it was a search on the internet for it. My parents had sat me down and said, we found this place that is willing to take you. You have to write them a letter. And if they decide to accept you, you can be gone within the week. And so it sounded great. Road trips, adventures, it sounded like a place that I could really heal and get a lot from. So I wrote a letter, and then I had a sit-down phone call with my parents and Mark and another staff member at the time. And they talked, and they accepted me. And as my parents had said, I was on the flight there within a week.
Wow. Well, and whenever you say that it sounded like a place you could heal, tell me a little bit about what that was drawing you in that sounded really nice, because they had a pretty convincing website.
I was 12, so I'm going to be honest, it was the camps and the adventures and what sounded like a family presence. Because my family, don't get me wrong, my mother is my rock and my foundation. And my dad and I might have some issues here and there, but he's my dad. And, we're pretty tight too. At that time, it was not like that. So when I found out that it could be, I was 12, man. I was excited.
Mm-hmm. Everything sounds much better in our fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And for a child, a lot of times it seems like anything but where you're at is going to be better.
I've just gotten over that Santa wasn't real, and you're telling me I can go to this place full of fun and adventure? Absolutely.
And it's interesting how you worded that too, like you can be gone within the week.
Yeah, and I was. And they were not lying. I was on a plane.
Well, tell me a little bit about what it was like when you actually arrived. What was that like for you?
When I first arrived, it was really nice. I felt welcomed in. There was a sign with an M made for me that I could hang up on the wall. Like, I watched movies, I got to hang out with the older girls. I started seeing the older girls as older sister figures. Leslie was great. She was caring. She was almost motherly. Mark, the same, almost fatherly. It was everything that I could have wanted at 12 years old.
Yeah. And I know that when we've talked before, we've discussed that abuse is a cycle, and it often starts with a lot of love and a lot of love bombing. And whenever you first meet Mark and Leslie, they are really charming, especially when it's brand new.
Especially Mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very silver tongued.
Yes, absolutely. And Leslie, we all know her to be a pretty harsh person, but when you don't know her and she is putting on her fresh first start, that's when she's best at seeming kind and
Very
motherly.
Southern mother kind of style.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that facade tends to fade.
Very quickly.
Well, and not to mention that this is a lot of teens, and most of the time the teens were trying to care for each other and make the time good. That's just what teenagers do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it is very fair that you would have a lot of love from the teens that are there as well.
Yeah, and it really was like a family. Like the sitting around the table doing homework together and the dinners that everybody had to sit down at the table for. It was very family-esque.
All the right things were happening.
Mm-hmm. It was very cookie cutter.
Almost like it has to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Can't have can't have any seeps through the cracks.
Tell me a little bit more about what it was like as you started to get settled in and start your everyday life.
So once everything kind of became normal, Leslie became a little more harsh, like little bits by little bits, something that didn't happen before but happens now but isn't really bad. And it just kind of seems like she's getting on to you for something you did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few more weeks go by and it gets harsher and harsher with each passing time. And then that's when, the veil kind of comes down with them both because can't have Leslie be talked back to. I was there when their three oldest were teens, so the veil kind of comes off with them too.
I think it's interesting. You pointed out something that's really important, that it got a little harsher every time.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me again about what year this was that you went to live with them.
It was 2015 or 2016.
Okay. And whenever you first went there, was there an agreement on how long you would be there for?
No, I think that the goal was a year. But
Yeah.
as far as I'm aware, there was no agreement. I never made an agreement.
Yeah. And also, for those who don't know, Makenzie was one of the younger people. At 12 years old, most of the people who come into Adullam were 14, 15, 16, 17, and then there were young adults as well at that time. And one other thing, going back to what Makenzie said with them being harsher and harsher and Mark not wanting people to talk back, at that point in time, it happened right before I left, is when Mark started becoming more abusive as well, that he would interject himself into a problem that Leslie started. So Leslie would get onto someone, be really harsh, would be being abusive, and then if somebody combated that in any way, tell me a little bit about what your experience was with how Mark would react in those situations.
So Leslie had gotten mad at me for something, and this time sticks out to me to this day. Like, I still feel it in my core to this day. And Leslie had gotten on to me for something. And, we were going to Wednesday night church at that time. And, when we got back, I knew that I was going to end up being dealt with. So when we got back, I was super anxious. Mark was kind of trying to make me laugh and smile in the car while filling up gas before, going back to the ranch. And I went to the main house with Mark and Leslie, and I think one or two of the staff members, but I'm not totally sure. And Mark was sitting in his chair. Leslie was sitting in hers. I combated something Leslie had said, and Mark stood up and like towered over me and just started screaming to stand up and then sit down and then stand up and then sit down. And I was like, you don't ever talk to my wife like that. Like, I am to this day scared of tall people. I have
Mm.
this uncanny fear, and everybody thinks that it's weird. And I'm like, no, you don't know the story.
Wow. What are you feeling right now telling me that story? Do you still get things that come up for you?
Um, Anxiety. I
Yeah.
get anxious talking about it,
It makes
or
me feel anxious just listening to that.
yeah, makes me anxious, and it makes me a little nauseous
Mm,
looking at it through adult eyes, kind of thing. Like
right?
this whole thing, looking at it through my now adult eyes versus my then, preteen eyes.
Yeah.
It makes me sick.
Yeah, because I'm sure that you could agree, like I would never treat a child that way. Even if I was angry, and I might get a little impatient or something, but I'm not going to tower over someone and scream at them.
Yeah,
Especially the whole making you stand up and down, that's just like a control factor.
very much so military style.
Yeah.
Like,
They seem to embrace this military stuff a lot. It seems like that's a new pattern. I've recognized a lot of patterns, but that one is something that I'm seeing more and more.
really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they always had military people who would like be leaders, not always safe people, or people who were informed on how to help children. But
Now, I
strange.
gotta be honest, the leaders that I knew and,
Hmm.
really made a connection with, they were really good leaders.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Well, they were other young adults, right?
I'm pretty sure they were. I think
Yeah.
maybe 20s, early 20s. Couldn't
Yeah.
be much older than I am now.
Yeah. Yeah, because that some of the people that I'll be interviewing were young adults whenever they were involved, but they were also unfortunately suffering abuse.
Hmm.
Um, but what I've heard and what I'll get into with those other interviews is that they would see abuse happening and didn't feel like they could do a lot about it. Occasionally, they would try to intervene for the kids, but whenever you're 20 and you're facing somebody who's 40 and abusive,
What
it's
are you gonna do?
that's a huge difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
So, what were some of the things that they were most harsh with you about as a 12-year-old?
Anything that went wrong ever.
Mm.
It honestly didn't matter. There was one time I told Leslie I liked her nails because I was a kid. I was pining for her affection. I wanted that affection. I was craving
Mhm.
it. I needed it. So I told her I liked her nails. I didn't really like her nails. They were actually kind of bad. But I wanted her affection, so I told her I liked them, and she started yelling at me and telling me that I was selfish for not noticing sooner because she'd had them on for a week.
Wow. Wow. What a strange response.
Yeah, like, bitch, I don't even like her nails.
And that, I think you told me before, whenever you shared that, that it really hurt you.
It did. It made me feel like I couldn't do anything correctly and that I could never amount to anything in her eyes. And all I wanted to was amount to something in her eyes. I wanted her to like me. Like, it hurt and it cut down that, like, I was searching for it so much.
Mm.
And the times when, like, I really, really needed it, I didn't get it. But the times where I needed it for show or to draw me back in, that's when I would get it.
Yeah. And so something that you touched on before, and I think is really important to retouch on, is that abuse is a cycle. There's often the love bombing, and then tension starts to build and things feel off, like you know something's wrong. And then there's the abuse or the explosion, whatever occurrence was going to happen. And then typically you have back into the calm or love bombing phase, and then it just goes over and over again. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's so little moments of love whenever you're there all the time that we want so badly to cling to those because it's like the only affection that you're getting as a teen living there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so,
And we couldn't talk to our parents to get that.
yeah,
So
tell me how much you were allowed. How are you allowed to talk to your parents? How
I
often?
think maybe once a month,
Oh my God.
maybe. maybe. And whenever I did, they had to be monitored calls. Someone had to sit with me while I talked to my parents. I
That is
couldn't talk to my
weird.
parents privately.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought I wasn't the only one until I was talking about it with one of the previous leaders. And he was like, yeah, I used to have to sit and listen and make sure everything was good to go. And he had thought it was weird. And, come to find out, some of the girls had cell phones.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think they monitored those cell phones too because there was one young lady who was given a cell phone and it turned out they were looking at her messages. Yeah, they had attached her to their cloud. And so it wasn't even Mark and Leslie, it was Mark and another adult male.
Phenomenal. We love that. Why? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-mm.
You're going to be abusive. You can't be a pedo too. Like, pick one. You can cut it
Well,
out. But the dark humor,
unfortunately, they usually do go hand in hand. Yeah, they definitely monitored a lot of people's cell phones. They wouldn't let them like take them anywhere privately, and if they did have a cell phone, they used it to track them. They wanted people to have 360 or whatever, which for 20-year-olds isn't appropriate, you know.
no. And they wanted to, like, when they were listening in, they wanted to make sure I wasn't lying to my parents, which tells me, like, as an adult now, that they knew exactly what they were doing. There is no, oh, we didn't realize that this was this, or
Right.
this was abusive.
Right.
They knew exactly what they were doing if they were worried about a 12-year-old telling her parents what's
Mm-hmm.
going on.
Well, and that is such an invasion of privacy because you deserve to be able to talk to your parents in privacy. That
Mm-hmm.
is that's literally the way that you would be able to talk to them about things going wrong. So they're cutting off your one source of besides school, which we already know most of the people in the school were told that these kids were troubled, so they wouldn't really believe them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's no other way for you to even get out in that situation.
No. I remember one time, because you know how the no dating thing was a big thing?
Yeah.
I was 12,
Mm-hmm.
and I will say I was very ODD, did not
Mm-hmm.
like being told what to do. So I had a little secret boyfriend in sixth grade. And Mark found out about it, and I was called a Jezebel. Like, it was bad.
So you were a Jezebel because you had someone you were interested in and had a little school relationship with. Yeah, sounds real Jezebel.
Yeah.
It's funny because Leslie talks about how many people she slept with, but she never calls herself a Jezebel.
I know, right? What?
Yeah.
But Jezebel is so thrown out there. Jezebel and demons, and they were all thrown out by Leslie 90% of the time.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
it's ironic.
Didn't some people say that you were like one of the scapegoats for them for a while?
Oh, absolutely.
Because that often happened with people who were younger or had less defenses. They would get, and a scapegoat, for those who don't know, it's one person in a family who gets the brunt of all the blame and mistreatment. Tell me a little bit more about, um, a lot of people will say, well, there's no evidence of this. So give me a few more examples of things that you suffered that were mistreatment to you. I know that you have several
I
examples.
do. One of my most prominent is what I call the cookie incident. Okay, someone had made cookies the night before, and it was a school morning, so everything was ready to go and Bible study at 6 a.m. And
And were the cookies for other people or?
it was for everyone.
Hmm.
It was for just not at that specific time, I suppose.
Okay.
Um, and I'm gonna let you know right now, I'm not a big breakfast person. Never
Mm-hmm.
have been. And so there's one clue that it never happened. And I got blamed and accused for eating the cookies and then lying about it. And Mark was like, I will check the cameras. And me being 12 years old, told him to check them because I didn't do it. And he ended up sending me out of the main house and back to the dorm. I don't think he ever checked the cameras, but he also didn't bring it up
Mm.
afterwards. So tells me that he didn't like being called out.
He knew he was wrong.
And called on his bluff, because I imagine that he's not super used to that.
No, they are very defensive, of course, when they're wrong. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I know that in my video I talked about when I tried to self harm and Leslie called me. She was trying to blame me for not telling Mark that I was going home that day. And I'm like, for one, I go home every Thursday. And for two, I told Mark. And then instead of admitting, oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong, she just jumped to another thing to blame me about.
Yeah,
And that's what they do.
yeah.
That's what people don't understand is they never admit that they're wrong or could do better. And if they ever do in a small, like, it's not a true apology. It's like an excuse. Oh, I'm on my period. Or whenever I was there, she was pregnant all the time. So it was like always about that. But her behavior is pretty consistent despite
Yeah.
her body. And for Mark, he just never apologized in general.
Mm-hmm.
Leslie would pretend if she wanted something from you or if she wanted validation that she wasn't a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason.
Which that is a big one. You said validation that she wasn't a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
Tell me a little bit about what that brings up for you.
So she would ask after like her motherly expenditures.
Mm.
She'd be looking for reassurance. Like, do you feel like you're loved? Do you feel like you're cared for? Like,
Mm.
very brainwashy and gaslighty.
Yeah, because you're not actually asking. It's very
It's the tone
complicated.
behind it. You feel obligated to say yes so she
Yes.
doesn't feel sad.
Yeah, because we're being talked down to all the time and we're belittled in front of people. What makes you think that we're going to feel like
I
safe
feel
enough?
so loved right
Yeah.
now while you're humiliating me. This is great.
Yeah. And it doesn't lend itself to a trusting relationship where kids who are afraid can actually say, yeah, no.
Yeah.
And how would she respond if you even did, you know?
Yeah.
I have a question about the cameras. Did they actually have cameras?
I think they did.
Wow. I wonder, that's kind of weird, and I wonder where all they had them.
I think that they had one in the living room. So you know how they had that big arch, and
Mm-hmm.
then on one, well, Leslie redecorated all the time. But while I was there, on one side was the TV, and then Leslie's chair was over by the dining room
Mm-hmm.
arch, and then Mark's was over there by that.
Yep.
And in that corner on the side opposite to the TV stand, on the same wall as Leslie's chair, in the top corner was a camera, I'm pretty sure. But don't
Mm.
quote me on it.
Sure. Sure. It would be really strange to me if they had cameras in their kitchen because there's a lot of allegations that happened after I left where people didn't really have enough food. What was your experience like
Leslie,
with food?
let phenomenal, man. Leslie had, when I first got there, I was 12 years old. I weighed 98 pounds, I think. So I was very little.
Mm-hmm.
I was under my goal weight for that age. I'm pretty sure at 12, about 5 foot. I'm pretty sure I was a little under my weight.
Yeah.
So Leslie had, been like, you need to go eat more. You need to get more. And I was like, oh, she just cares about me. So I would go get more. And then as I started to gain weight, she'd be like, you need a portion. You need a portion. And I was like, oh, she just cares about me. I still have an eating disorder to this day
Yeah.
that is very hard to get by with. And it's very hard on my loved ones. It's really, really hard on my fiance. Like yesterday, I'll be honest, I had a little bit of a slip up. I didn't eat anything all day, and then I baked muffins, and he sat there for like an hour and a half trying to help me get through muffins.
Wow. You know, I totally understand that. Whenever somebody is monitoring the way our body looks all the time, whether that is telling you to get more or to portion, it's giving you a message.
Yeah.
And I'll leave people to fill in those messages because I think most people have had experiences like that. But tell me, how did that affect you and how you saw your body and how you see your body?
Well, totally honest, I don't love my body all the time. I went from being a happy kid that did to this experience hitting, and then everything just kind of crumbling down, and it felt like all that I was good for was my body. And so it honestly, at 16, it really, really pumped that all I'm good for is my body. And I would eat nothing but apple slices for 3 days because that was 15 calories. And then I would go and I would sell pictures. And it was just it very, I don't want to say objectified because it seems like in this world there's only one definition for it.
Yeah.
But it was like we were objectified as kids. It was you need to look a certain way, you need to present yourself a certain way. You are representing the dollar family.
It's been said that Leslie liked everybody to look pretty. It's interesting too because you were not the only person who she made comments about that with. There were a lot of people who she would comment on how much they ate. Most of the time, we just ate pizza and spaghetti and things like that. There would occasionally be different things, but sometimes there would be times where we wanted more food, or the guys maybe wanted thirds or whatever, or maybe somebody who their body type was a little bit different than skinny, that they would have comments made to them about their eating habits.
Yeah.
That constant scrutiny.
Yeah. It's like being looked under a microscope all of the time and never being able to be what they want to see.
So our body is already something that's hard for us to live with and accept in this world. And to have that constantly there. Yeah, I remember she would also make comments if we gained weight.
Mm-hmm.
And our clothes.
Especially at very, influential ages. Like,
yeah,
these are the ages that eating disorders do develop. It's a very dangerous and scary thing if it gets out of hand, which unfortunately, if it starts, it's an addiction. It's hard to stop.
Yes, absolutely. And you might have read this before, and some people may know this, but an eating disorder kind of has the same reward system as anything else. So like a drug or a running high, doing really well on a test, whatever, like you get this rush of dopamine. So whether you're eating too much or just eating in general, eating does it, releases good feelings, or whenever you like vomit, often that releases dopamine for us. And so it feels good. It feels like we accomplished what we wanted to.
Yeah, or the complete opposite. Eating feels like a burden and it makes you feel guilty. But throwing it up makes you feel like you righted the wrong.
Absolutely. Leslie was very fixated on people who were like prettier, and those were the people that she often would put in the front. Those are the people that she would put on her Facebook page and take pictures of. Tell me a little bit more about some other things that you experienced that you felt was wrong even at the time.
Mark's temper. And then one thing that really, really felt wrong, even at that age. Well, there's two. Okay, there's two things that felt really, really wrong. One, so I was a very sheltered kid to an extent. Okay, like I knew about some things, but I didn't know about everything. And I didn't know what masturbation was until Mark and Leslie decided that I was going to have a shower buddy because I was masturbating in the bathroom during my shower time.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a fun conversation with my father when we talked.
How did your father feel about that?
It was a very awkward conversation. My dad had to sit there and tell his 12-year-old daughter that masturbation wasn't wrong and that it was a natural human growth thing, and it was a good thing to explore my body.
Wow. So you actually had that conversation with him when you were still very young.
Yeah. And it was a conversation that neither one of us were prepared for.
Oh my God, I can't imagine.
And that was kind of forced upon my father. Like, my dad hasn't always made the best decisions, but I believe that he did his best, and that is not something that should be forced on any parent if they're not ready to tell their children about it.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because Mark and Leslie talk shit about everybody's parents. And they are not the greatest parents. Like, they're not even close.
Parents.
Yeah, that's so true. Everybody else cared for their kids.
They gave birth. but they weren't parents. They were
Yeah.
disciplinarians.
Yes, absolutely. Authoritarian, even to their own, like I know their own kids got obviously different treatment, but even their own kids suffered.
I feel like their kids suffered most from neglect.
Yeah.
And then when they weren't neglected, they were being punished. The three youngest, I was 12. I wasn't much older than Eli, and I always had to sit with the three youngest ones and kind of watch them. I was 12 and telling them what to do.
Like you were
And
put in charge, which is not appropriate.
no, I was much older. I didn't know anything.
Mm.
Um, and then the times that the three youngest really did get attention was when they were being disciplined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whenever I was there, Eli was little. And Zeke was born just a while before I left. He was probably less than a year, probably when I left or so. They were horrible to Eli.
They were, and they still, well, I don't know if they still are, but they were when I was there. Eli was maybe 10 or 11. Zeke had to have been 8 or 9, and Bella, I think, was 3 or 4. Leslie would give Bella and Zeke a lot of attention when she was feeling very Mama Leslie. But Eli would just be outside or told to go do something with his dad or, stuck with me and the two little ones. And
Yeah,
his sisters didn't hang out with him. The girls kind of hung out with each other, and it was very cliquey.
yeah, that makes me sad because Eli, he had a lot of behavioral issues whenever he was growing up, like when he was 2 and 3 and 4, whenever I was there. But looking back at it now, it's because he needed love and attention, and he was acting out to get love and attention. And he was in a chaotic environment all the time that could have been highly overstimulating. I mean, we were always exhausted. I'm sure that he felt that too.
Yeah,
But
and a big house full of
people
to a
going through all the
kid, that's
time.
a lot of people.
Yes. And all he ever got was spankings
Hmm.
and also told that he had demons,
Yeah,
even as a child.
and it's funny that you bring up spanking because, like, they were so open about how they discipline their kids. Like, so open about it with everyone else and almost to scare us. There was at one point they called my parents and asked for permission to spank me, which, what?
Did they ever try?
No.
My
No, they never
God.
tried. But in
They
their
sure
words,
wanted to, obviously.
or they wouldn't have asked. In their words, they didn't know what else to do. They wanted to move me into the main house because they didn't know what else to do. Like,
Yeah, they always had this weird thing about different people they'd move into the main house. I know that you have a little bit of a list. Tell me something else that we haven't covered that you feel like is important to share.
here's a big one. And, this whole conversation is a trigger warning, but this
Sure.
specifically is a huge trigger warning. They would sit me in their room. And there was one time that they sat me in their room and Leslie sat next to me on that little like end of the bed sofa thing. Do you know what I mean? Like a
I
little
don't think
bit. It
she probably didn't have that when I was there, but
was like a
they
little bit.
did they did so much remodeling throughout the
Yes.
years. It was like always new shit. So
Yes. But we don't have money for good stuff.
we can't buy you
Makes,
underwear,
makes sense. I get it. It's okay.
which we need to get into that later too. Like, did they even provide for you? Which probably no. But anyway, you're in their room.
Yeah, and Marcus over by the door kind of blocking it, but not in like an intimidating way. Okay, not necessarily in an intimidating way. And Leslie was sitting next to me, and they kept talking to me and talking to me, and they got me to a point where I didn't know, like, they got what they wanted. They wanted me to tell them that my dad had molested me as a child.
Oh my God.
And me being a kid, I was locked in their room, wanted to go. They told me that I couldn't until I opened up about it and talked about it.
I know for a fact other people have told me that they would lock them in their room with Mark and Leslie, if not, possibly other leaders, question you. It's almost like a confessional. Like
Mm-hmm.
they would tell you things like, we know that you've been doing something sinful, or we know that this has happened in your past, or you're carrying the spirit. So did
We
that
to get
resonate
those
with you?
demons out of you.
Ah,
My
man.
phrase. She
Yeah.
should get it tattooed, seriously. That way she doesn't have to say it so much.
Yeah. Put it on her palm.
Just
So I wonder why they would want you to say that rather other than just this is the leverage we have, or now you have a testimony.
my only guess is they wanted something that they could use,
Mm,
and you can't say that someone said it if they didn't say it, because you
yeah.
can't be like, she said this,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't be able to lie because I did say it.
I'm still caught up on the whole masturbation thing too.
Yeah, me too.
Like
It's been
why
9 years and I'm still caught up on it.
well, why did they think you were I guess my first question is like why would they assume that you're doing that? But also they had clear shower curtains and they were like obsessed with making sure people weren't masturbating or shaving private areas and stuff like that. It's wild. Okay, so they force you to confess this that actually didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
What were you feeling during that interrogation?
Scared. I was
Scared?
really scared. I didn't want to say that because at that point in time, I was very much so a daddy's girl. Now, as I'm older,
Mm.
I am my mom's daughter. But at that point in time, I was a daddy's girl. Could
Did
not separate me from my father.
Wow. Did
And
you
so
tell your father about that?
I don't think I ever did.
Wow. I'm sure he would be infuriated.
Probably. It was a very dark time. And when I did try and talk to my parents afterwards, I wasn't really believed about a lot. And if I was, they never let it on. But I feel like it's hard knowing that you allowed your child to go into such a position. So,
Hmm.
like, I understand not being able to listen to it or believe it because it's hard for a parent to watch and listen to that happen to your child, especially when you allowed it to happen and you put it into motion to happen.
Yeah, I struggle with that part a lot myself. I was actually talking to my therapist about that this last week. On one hand, I get it. They're human and it's hard and it feels like a failure. But on the other hand, we went through it and
Yeah,
this is your
it's
child.
supporting your kid, but
Yeah.
it's understandable. Like, it's not the best outcome or situation, but it's not so far out of the ballpark that I don't get it, especially, as an adult and
Hmm.
thinking about what would have happened if, it was my child. I would feel extremely guilty.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to reconcile for sure. My stepmom just recently told me that she hadn't watched any of my videos because she was afraid to. She
Yeah.
was afraid of what she was going to hear.
I'm not even going to send the video to my parents.
Hmm.
I'll send it to my sister because, I think I told you earlier that I had talked to my sister about it for the first time, and she actually wants to be there and support and know about it. And
Hmm.
so I'll send it to her, but I will not be sending it to my parents. I'll
Sure.
send it to my fiance,
Hmm.
and that's the support system,
Yeah.
because that it's important to have a support system no matter what phase of healing you're in. It's
Mm.
9 years later and stuff still haunts.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm 14 years out and
yeah,
just have gotten some relief within the last few years, I feel.
yeah.
Yeah. So, going back to the providing for you, were your
Mm-hmm.
parents giving them money while you were there?
Probably.
Did they ever provide for you? Like, did they get you shampoo or soap or anything or underwear?
My grandfather did.
Ah.
My grandfather lived in Russellville as well. And I
Mm.
was allowed to see my grandfather. I would go to like lunch and breakfast and things like that and hang out with my grandfather every now and then.
I'm sure it was scheduled, of course.
Oh, duh.
Hmm.
And the first little bit is monitored
Ugh.
because why
Like they
not?
went with you?
No, like it was at their house.
Oh.
Why would we? Now, come on. Why would Leslie leave her chair? Be so serious.
You're so right.
My grandfather would bring me things.
Wow.
And he would bring me my necessary things. And I don't know if my parents paid him for it or if they gave money to Adullam, which I assume they did because
Hmm.
Adullam, like Mark was really, really into talking to my parents.
Hmm.
And my mom was, well, she still is, but she was in the military at the time. And it was a very middle class family. So
Hmm.
you know that Mark and Leslie have that middle class family's child to weasel on,
Hmm.
especially at such a young age with monitored phone calls.
Well, and that's strange that they would monitor your phone calls and then they were talking to your parents all the time. Who knows what they were telling them? They certainly weren't telling them that they were having someone watch you shower.
Mm-mm.
That's just wild. It's very picking and choosing. If they were truly not doing anything wrong, they would not be ashamed to be honest about what was going on there.
Yeah. And, my dad won't, like, he never would really talk about it. He told me about when Mark asked to spank me, and my dad had actually told him to do it, and
Hmm.
he never did. So I don't know what Mark's little thought process was, but my dad wouldn't talk about what they talked about.
Well, tell me, I know that you have that list. Is there another thing on your list that you'd be interested in sharing?
Um, there was there was one time when they were down bad and didn't know what else to do. So they had me scrubbing the tiles and the grout with a toothbrush and bleach.
Because they
And
were upset with you?
probably, I remember the specific instance. I don't even remember what I had done for it or anything. They might have just wanted me to play Cinderella. Who knows? But Leslie was dancing around singing Joy and started yelling at me and getting in my face while I'm crying on the floor scrubbing the tiles.
Oh my
And she's
God.
like, "Why are you crying? You need to feel the joy." Like, bitch, shut up. What?
That's so wild. You need to be happy right now.
Yeah, well,
Like,
when
that's
I
not
said I
creepy.
wanted to be a Disney princess, this isn't what I meant.
But you know what? You're also not the only person. Like, they had people scrub tiles when I was there. So
Yeah.
they used us as their slaves.
Mm-hmm. And then Mark wanted foot massages. I
Okay,
hate.
yeah. So I forgot that you were one of the girls who, so he asked you to give him foot massages.
Yeah.
Tell me
So
about that. How did that happen and what was the first time that he asked you and stuff and what was the environment like? When did it happen?
I think one of the times that I remember doing it, he was playing around and teasing and trying to be funny, and he took his socks and shoes off, and after a while just kind of made it seem like they hurt, and asked me if I would mind massaging them, and I said no because I was 12 and wanting his affection and that fatherly figure and everything like that. So I did. I hate feet. No gloves, nothing. Just lotion and his feet.
Like, was that, were you alone? Was it during a movie? What happened there?
I don't think I was alone, but there wasn't a lot of people in the main house.
Okay, so it happened in the main house.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it usually would happen. And a lot of other people said it would happen during movie nights and stuff, but it's clear that he kind of finagled it in there. And again, we don't feel like we can say no.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big problem. Like, and somebody else brought up a really good point. Like, why isn't your wife massaging your feet?
Yeah. 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 Or, you can do it yourself. It's a DIY project.
Seriously, we can reach.
Or there's this great invention that was even there during the time that I was there called a foot massager. This great thing, you stick your feet in it and it kind of moves and it's great.
And
That
he,
would have worked too.
oh my God. Well, and not to mention the fact that from the finances that I saw, they had plenty of money to go get massages if they wanted to.
Plenty. Weekly.
A lot of people have said that they wore really nice clothes and had nice things. You know, Leslie always had like Biolage shampoo and stuff like that. Did you notice that too, that people had nicer stuff whenever like their own family did?
Designer clothing.
Mm.
Mark and Leslie. and all of their children would be dressed up in really, really nice clothes.
Mm. They didn't buy that for other people.
No, why would they? They're not their
Mm-mm.
kids.
Mm-mm. They
Why
don't
would
care.
they?
But they're benefiting off of these kids for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because just to be clear, for those who might not know, is that they never had other jobs. Now, at some point, Mark started the construction company, which he
He
used
did
child
that when
labor.
I was there.
Okay, so like child labor for sure with that construction company. Did he ever have you do labor?
Car washes.
Yep.
You remember the car washes every summer?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
hmm yeah. Because I was one of the girls who he wanted to be out there in the front. You know.
With the sign.
Hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then after a while, you could come back and wash the cars. But don't complain that it's too hot because we're doing the Lord's work here.
Oh yeah. There's no room for any kind of emotion at all.
Yeah, no, don't complain. And you
Yeah.
better have a smile because if you look sad, you're in trouble.
Mm. Well, yeah. So at some point they started that father and son's construction, and that's the place where he would sometimes take kids out of school to go work. But other than that, the entire time I knew them, aside from occasionally being youth pastors, that was their money source. They would
Mm-hmm.
claim kids on their taxes. They got tax breaks for being a 501c3 whenever they were a 501c3. And in 2015, that's from 2013 to 2015, they actually didn't register as a 501c3, which is suspicious. Like, why would you have a gap?
And I was there during the construction. See, I was, on the younger end, so they never wanted me to mess with anything. So I would watch the kids. I would be coloring blocks with Eli.
Yeah, just stay out of the way. Be quiet.
Mm-hmm. Or, collecting things like wood, or, even the times that weren't child labor that just were weird, like when we would go to other people's houses and sleep on cots if we were lucky. Or I saw
Yes.
one girl make a bed out of chairs.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Which
that's
is
another huge problem. No, yeah, because there were all these trips they would go on, and I know I can attest to it whenever we would go on trips. A lot of times we didn't have proper places to sleep or proper like bedding, nothing soft to sleep on. Multiple times people got bed bugs. Not to mention we were going to places that were always safe and the
and
people were
all
always creepy.
yeah, and all packed into that a big white van.
Yes, yes,
It's
packed.
so cramped for hours of a
Yes.
road trip.
And often without proper seat belts,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes without proper air or heat.
And you better go to the bathroom when you're told because we're not stopping. And if
He doesn't care. There was a kid who almost peed himself, like was in physical pain because
mm-hmm.
he would not stop. He didn't care. He didn't have any empathy. Did y'all take exchange students when you were there?
Yes, yes, we did.
So I'm pretty sure it's confirmed now that they have had exchange students the entire time of Adullam.
Yeah, there was one girl from I don't know where, but she played the piano beautifully. They would always try and get her to play.
But it's so sad for the exchange students because they didn't get the same experience that most do. Most exchange students come over, they have a loving family, they get to do extracurricular and, have the American experience. But at Adullam, you ministered and you couldn't do anything outside of it and you couldn't have it extracurricular.
I was constantly separated from the older ones. That was a big one that kind of strikes me as odd now as an adult, is I was always separated from the older ones and put with their kids.
Why do you think that was?
My honest thing is I think that they wanted to end up adopting me so that they could have that award of look at the good thing that we did. Just everything that they did, calling and asking my parents to spank me, trying to move me into the main house. Like, it was all a little too surreal, keeping me with their children and not with the rest of the group.
That is a pattern, though, because there's other girls who felt the same way. They would literally move them to their house. They would start allowing them to have more family time with them, and they wanted to adopt them. And that was always the person who massaged Mark's feet. I think if they adopt, they get a tax break for the adoption. But then if you were 12, they would have potentially had the replacement kid because you can only claim so many kids on your taxes. But when their kids started leaving, well, if you were there to take the place, then that's another kid they can claim on their taxes.
Yeah, I got screamed out over books I read all the time. One time I was serving coffee and toast because servitude mindset. Serving coffee and toast, and Leslie yelled at me for not making it right. It was like, "You're not gonna find a man if you can't cook toast right." Like, ma'am, I'm engaged to the hottest man alive.
So basically, they always had kids get their coffee ready, get their breakfast ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
You told me that they liked it a certain way, so everybody had to know like how they like their coffee and toast.
Mark liked cheese toast made in the oven, and Leslie liked buttered toast made in the oven. So it's not like I was using a toaster. Okay.
Were you guys allowed to go and make yourself breakfast before Bible study?
I don't think we were.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to. They
I
wanted
think
us to eat at
that,
school.
yeah, I think that their family could. And I think that some of the older ones could have coffee, but no, I don't think we were.
Allowed to have breakfast. Like
Yeah.
when I was there, we weren't allowed to go and look for breakfast. I mean, anytime we were go through the cabinets, we were monitored.
Yeah, we had breakfast at school.
Yeah, which was usually a piss poor breakfast, and we were still hungry.
For having to wake up at 5:30 to go to Bible study by 6, and God forbid you were 2 minutes late.
Yeah, and then whenever you were there, I'm sure you experienced the fact. Obviously, you couldn't read books. She got onto
No.
people for reading anything but the Bible.
Yeah.
But were you allowed to take a nap?
No.
Never.
No. Why would I be able to? There was at one point, there was no air conditioning in the new girls' dorm on the upstairs level, and God forbid we asked.
So obviously, you suffered, abuse that was related to your body and how you looked and how much you were able to eat or not eat.
Mm-hmm.
You suffered being isolated from your friends and family and parents, monitoring your phone calls, telling your parents things that weren't true, not telling your parents everything that was going on. Not to mention that you would get in trouble for every little thing that you did, or even if they were just in a bad mood,
Mm-hmm.
they would take their anger out on you. And as you said, this is a slow process. It was something that got worse over time. How long were you living with them for?
I was either there just shy of 10 months or 10 months.
Okay. That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for that to be so impactful and to still affect you to this day, we'll get into a little bit more about how it still affects you, but tell me a little bit about how you actually ended up leaving their residence.
Oh, this is quite the story. So, Mark had talked to my father again, and my dad said that if he really wanted me out, then to tell this facility that they had found that I tried to hang myself with a belt. And he did. I had to stay in the main house with bags packed and everything until midnight or so, and I left the house in handcuffs and went from Russellville, Arkansas to Springfield, Missouri in handcuffs at 12 years old.
Wait,
That's
wait, wait.
something I did not do.
How? Okay, hold on. Did you ever confirm that your dad told Mark that?
My dad's the one that told me. And when I got to, okay, so when I got to the facility, they were like, "Do you know why you're here?" And I was like, "No, I don't know why I'm here." And they said, "You tried to kill yourself with a belt." And I said, "No, I didn't." And they said, "Well, that's what your guardians beforehand had said." I called my dad, and dad confirmed that he had told Mark to say that.
Wow. Why would he say that?
My father or Mark?
Both. Like, especially your father. Like, why would your father give them that idea?
My dad is a puppeteer.
Mm.
My dad has many things that I will never understand. Um, but my dad is also fairly good at manipulation.
Mm.
And I couldn't tell you why he did it. I can't tell you his intentions for Mark because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
He wanted me out of his house.
Mm.
I will never understand.
Yeah. So Mark and Leslie, did you feel that they were like getting tired of having you there?
Yeah. Yeah, it got to a point where it felt like they kind of just wanted me out.
Mm-hmm.
And that last night, love bombed like crazy. Leslie cried, love bombed like crazy. Hugs before saying goodbye. And then I found out why when I got to the facility.
Okay. So did things get worse towards the end? Did you feel like you were getting more mistreatment than normal?
Yeah, it definitely felt like a good day wasn't a good day. It was just a day that I didn't get in trouble or yelled at.
I know exactly how that
Constantly walking
feels.
on eggshells,
Yes.
um, feeling like when is the other shoe going to drop?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yep.
the bad days were normal days.
Mm-hmm.
And, the good times weren't as many.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said before, it's not 100% of the time bad. It's not
Right.
100% of the time abuse. That's exhausting. There's got to be some times of keeping the person reeled in, and those times got less and less and fewer apart until the last day I was there.
Wow. So tell me, how did they break that to you? Like, what did they tell you? Just pack your stuff?
I don't remember. I think they told me that someone was going to be here to pick me up in this amount of time and that I was going to go with them, but I don't remember exactly what they said.
Hmm.
I actually think that the girls packed my stuff up for me.
Hmm. That's pretty common too, which is very weird to me.
Yeah. And a lot of my stuff was left behind, and they were expensive stuff. Like, I had gotten Prisma colored pencils, like a whole
Mm-hmm.
set.
Those are
And
like
those that I left
$45.
behind, they
Yeah.
were expensive. And those got left.
That's really ironic. And it's funny that you bring that up because I've had, so just for people who don't know, I do confirm these stories. Like most of the things that people share on here have been corroborated by 3 to 4 more people. I have had 3 to 4 more people tell me that they also stole things from them that were valuable. Nike
Mm-hmm.
shoes, Birkenstocks, anything that was name brand. Um,
Yeah.
for me, I didn't have anything nice, but they kept my journals.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that that was this common theme that they would keep people's nice things.
They kept my journals.
Yep. They didn't want people to see what they had what you had gone through is why. And so then you're in this facility and literally they told this facility that you had tried to harm yourself with a belt.
Kill myself. Like, not even just harm myself. They told them that I tried to end it. I
Right.
haven't owned a belt since because
Wow.
every time I look at them, then I remember it and it makes me sick to my stomach. Like,
What did that feel like whenever you were in the facility and they told you what they had claimed you did?
unbelieved. I felt like nothing I said mattered, and I felt like because I was a kid, they were going to believe the adult.
Mm.
And I felt abandoned and neglected and left behind.
Mm.
And I was angry. I was very, very angry
Mhm.
at them, at my parents. I was angry at the world. And I feel like no, that is when everything kind of changed up. And because I turned 13 in that facility, that's kind of when everything kind of got worse.
Yeah. Wow. That's so sad. And it breaks my heart because that is so common that kids are not going to be believed, and it's easy for people to abuse them and to mistreat them. And
Mm-hmm.
then nothing to ever come of it. And then these kids become adults and they have this horrible trauma.
Mm-hmm.
How has this experience, because obviously Mark and Leslie claim that they help all these kids and that these kids have a better life because of them, but it's just not true. We have almost I think we have like 50 people now or something. It's always growing. Our
Mm-hmm.
survivors group for people who have survived Mark and Leslie. All these people, same thing. Really bad experiences, nightmares, trauma, things they had to work through in therapy.
I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of the stuff that was impactful growing up has really impacted the adult side. Like me personally, after Leslie's body stuff, I started selling pictures and videos and making things that I should not have been making.
Mm.
And I only just recently stopped that. Um, Eating disorders and not being able to walk in certain places and substance abuse. Like kind of things come up with it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the impact that they had.
Mm-hmm. How would you compare your time with Mark and Leslie to some of the other things that you went through in your life? Like, do you feel like that was a really big part of your childhood that you look back and go like, oh, that was a big bad thing that happened to me?
Yeah. Before I joined the survivors group, I had kind of suppressed it a lot.
Mm,
And I had always just said it was a group home that I went to for a little while because it resembled a group home and it was easier to explain without having to go into the whole story.
yeah.
And then afterwards, I would compare it and the feelings that I had with it to the time that my father tried to set the house on fire.
Wow.
So the feelings are very strong and very present and very just not a fun feeling.
Yeah. Like fear, uncertainty, confusion.
Abandonment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How does that, like, how has that been to try to work through that stuff today in your life?
Honestly, it's been really hard. If I did not have my fiance with me and helping me through it and sitting down and watching every video and researching with me, I don't think I would be able to sit here and have this conversation today
Yeah.
because he has been such a rock and a foundation that it just kind of has helped me to process and to heal through it. And then, he'll sit down and we'll do aftercare and we'll just cuddle and watch Supernatural. And then I'll pause it for no reason and giggle when he gets frustrated.
Mhm. Yeah. It's nice to be able to finally have a feeling of control and safety.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
It's taking back that control.
Yes. And it's not uncommon for people to go into things like OnlyFans or addiction. You're actually not the only one. Other people who came out of Adullam did that. And it's not only because it's available and it's just common right now, but also there's almost like a feeling of needing to reclaim your body and be like, I have a choice. I get to do this, and it's me deciding and not somebody else.
I wish that's the path I went down. I was more of this is what it's for.
Yeah.
So
Like
it
this is the only purpose my body has.
Yes, it was very much so. If I don't put out,
Mm.
then why would I be wanted?
So maybe it also taught you to perform.
Yes, great actress. I could provide in the best movies,
Hmm.
but no,
Yeah.
couldn't
Yeah.
be famous enough. So,
Well, but that makes sense too, because everything at Adullam was about performance. And even for you being in a facility, it's about acting the right way to get out.
having to figure out how to speak in tongues. Do
Yeah.
you know how many times I faked tongues?
Yeah, I get that. I
I
definitely
don't
had
like
to
being touched.
I had to pretend to like fall down in the spirit many times. So,
And
yeah.
they would just keep standing there and praying, and not even just praying, but yelling at you. And it was
Speak.
scary. Yeah.
Yes. They do
And
that at
I
the ramp
hated
too.
it. I hated it. I don't like being touched. I'll go to
Yeah.
church every now and then with my grandma, and I've had people that try to lay hands on me, and I feel so bad. I'll just
Ugh.
sidestep.
What do you think was the hardest thing, or is the hardest thing that you're having to overcome from what you experienced there?
The nausea of looking at it through adult eyes. The
Yeah.
sick stomach feeling, like it's a genuine like I feel it now. It's like right here and it just
Hmm.
sits there and it turns your stomach like you're going on the loop of a roller coaster. I'd say that is the hardest part about opening it up again. The
Hmm.
hardest part about being there was wanting their affection so much and just not getting it and getting the complete opposite.
Yeah.
But the hardest part now is looking at it through adult eyes and realizing it, and that doesn't sit well in your stomach.
Hmm. And when you say looking at it through adult eyes, tell me what you mean. Because, for me, I look at it and I go like, oh my God, that is not appropriate to treat a child that way. And I would
Mhm.
never do that. Is that what you feel or?
Not necessarily. So with me, it's looking back on it, knowing what I know now versus what I knew back then, and
Hmm.
seeing that what I thought was okay is
Hmm.
really, really not okay.
Right.
Like, rather than, oh my God, I would never treat a kid like that, which, yes, I mean, that's part of it, but it's more so, oh my God, I thought that was okay.
Hmm.
My world was flipped.
Hmm.
And so it was a very yucky feeling.
Hmm. It's like a revelation for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I want to first just thank you so much for sharing this. I think it's so brave, especially at your age. And I know how hard it is to talk about it and to process it, and how long it takes to really let that sink in and to deconstruct and reconstruct everything that we learned there. What advice would you give to somebody who's in a similar situation, to parents or to kids or to cult members? Like, what do you want people to know?
I think that my biggest form of advice would be to not look at things through rose colored glasses,
Mm-hmm.
to really take a look around you and to make sure that whatever they can't take your spirit away and they can't take the spark that you carry inside of you. And parents, you were manipulated too. So
Mm-hmm.
don't hold it too heavy. Believe your kid and don't internalize it. Support each other.
Mm. I love that,
Yeah.
because it's true that a lot of the people who've come out of Adullam have had strained relationships with some of their caregivers or their guardians or their parents. And thankfully, some people have been able, through all of this coming out, to have those hard conversations. And if I think as a parent, if you can just say, I didn't know and I didn't ever want you to go through that, and then to validate that child who's been through that, that can make such a close relationship.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you can take them suckers down together.
Yeah. And it can mend things. And
Yeah.
Army has numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want to say to Mark and Leslie, or anything else you want to add?
Really?
Yeah.
Anything I want to say to Mark and Leslie
Anything you want to say to Mark and Leslie?
today, but I'm engaged now. So, and he doesn't ask me to rub his feet. And he doesn't want me to make his toast. He just wants me to bake. So, joke's on you. And you may have ruined a lot of lives, but you didn't ruin mine.
Mm. Yeah, they caused a lot of effects, but you know what? We're still standing strong. And now we've come together to support each other,
And I hope they
ironically.
rot in hell. They need to
Honestly,
get those demons out of them.
well, and you know, God, like, I'm personally not a believer, but in the Bible it says, whatever you do to the least of these, you've done to me.
Mm-hmm.
And also to not mistreat his little children. They're
Yeah.
precious. So, yeah, I think this could have all been avoided if Mark and Leslie wanted to do better. But the more I've learned, the more I've realized they are true cons, they are
Mm-hmm.
true narcissists, and they are abusive. They just
Yeah.
are.
And I hope they rot in the darkest parts of hell.
Mm. And if not, I sure hope that they get to a dark place to where they realize the weight of
Mm-hmm.
how much hurt they have put on people.
I hope they, and this is terrible, but you said anything I want to say. I hope they feel the hurt that they put a lot of us through.
Yeah. Yeah. And just so we're clear, we're not wishing harm on them and we don't want anybody to harm them. We would, though, like accountability, and we would love to have justice. We would love to have them be held accountable for what they've done. Um, and I really do hope that one day they realize they're wrong, but I highly doubt they only double down whenever they're faced with these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, Makenzie, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Not only do I think you're brave,
Kind of fun.
yes, I was going to say, not only do I think you're brave, but I also enjoy talking to you. And
Yeah.
most of the people who have come out of this, it's like it gives you a genuineness and a realness. Like, we don't have time. We've already been fake. Let's just be ourselves.
Yeah, and the great thing about, and I hate to say this because it sounds so, so bad, and I wish none of us had gone through it. However, the great thing is we did all go through it. We have a support system within ourselves because we all went through it. It's like with siblings.
Yeah,
Nobody can understand your home life like your siblings can.
that's
Well,
true.
nobody can understand this home life like
Yeah,
the people that we had around us.
that's so true. We do
Yeah.
understand each other in a way that nobody else does.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening to Makenzie's story. Thank you for following the story. If you are interested in following more, feel free to give me a subscribe on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Although I will say Instagram is my least favorite. Somehow I've gotten a lot of followers on there for this stupid video I made, but whatever, I'll take it. It was like an unrelated video. But anyway, guys, if you're here, thank you. If you've been supporting us, thank you. Really, truly, like all of the support it means so much to me and the other survivors. And we're going to keep on trucking and seeing where this takes us. I will be doing more interviews, so be looking for those. And until the next time, we hope to see you again.
Bye.
Bye.
Now, come on. Why would Leslie leave her chair?